You join me today on the River Trent at Burton Joyce. It's the venue where I recently qualified for the 2021 Riverfest final. I absolutely love this section of the river, basically because there's so much varied fishing to be done. You can be fishing the feeder in some pegs, the waggler, the bollo, the stick float, the whip short. However, on the day I qualified, it was a very straightforward match and I just fished the pole at 13 metres. We came down to the river today to fish the same peg so I could run you through my tactics that I used on the match. This makes a really nice change for me because I'm normally the other side of the camera filming. However, Mother Nature was against us today. It was very, very windy, so we made the decision to move up into the top section, which is actually the ferry field section, and fish in a more sheltered area. For the past 12 months, I've been working with many of the Drennan anglers, and in particular, Mr. 5-time world champion, Alan Scotthorne. I've been very lucky to obviously learn lots of things from Alan during our time on the bank, whether that be a commercial or a river like we are today. And I believe this has certainly helped my own fishing. So on the day of the Riverfest qualifier down here on Burton Joyce, I actually drew the end section, which is known as the rack. I drew peg 17, which is actually 4 from the end of the match. On that day, I just fed hempen casters at 13 metres after initially balling in 12 balls of ground bait. I found out that the more casters I fed, the quicker I got a bite and the stamp fish actually improved. Finding out the best hook bait is always important, and by constantly alternating between maggots, casters, occasionally hemp, you'll soon find out what the fish actually want on any given day. Today a single caster was by far the best bait. Working with people like Alan or Wayne Swinscoe, Steve Hemingway, Dean Barlow, they all stick to the same formula in not overcomplicating things, doing the simple things very, very well, and more importantly, consistently. So I've really tried to incorporate this into my own fishing. By sticking to this idea of keeping things very simple but doing them well, on the day of the match my swim was about 6 feet deep, so I decided to throw in 12 balls of ground bait to make some noise and then just fish at 13 metres all day feeding hempen caster. Luckily for me, this panned out perfectly and I went on to win the match. So where we are today, we've come to the ferry field just to get out of the wind. We're about the second peg in just from the gate. Today I started the session exactly the same as I did on the day of qualification. I just balled in 12 balls of ground bait at 13 metres. The swim was fractionally deeper today, only a foot deeper, about 7 feet. So I set exactly the same 2 rigs up again. A bulk down and a through the water rig. The bulk down had the bulk, an olivette and just 3 droppers about 12 inches from the hook, and the through the water rig just had number 10 shot equally spaced down the rig. We all have favourite floats for this style of fishing, and mine is the AS7. For me, it suits my fishing a treat. It's just the best all-round river float. The shape of the body, the heavy stem, the thin bristle, you can read all of the bites, you can just work that float. And with it being so windy today, the shape of the float and the heavy stem has certainly helped control the rig in this 7 foot deep swim. Although it may not look it on camera, the wind has been very testing at times today, but we've still managed to put together a lovely net of fish, 15–16 pounds of roach and dace, mainly caught on single caster. I've managed today to keep bites coming, just the same by swapping between 2 rigs. The fish sometimes drifted off downstream and I had to chase them. This was better with a through the water rig, and then at times when the fish moved back upstream, I just found that the bulk rig, getting it straight down to them, produced a quicker bite. I cannot emphasise enough how important it is to get the feeding right. I started off by feeding little and often, probably 10 to 12 casters, same with hemp, every other rundown. I ended up big pouching. By big pouching I mean 30 to 40 casters every rundown. This brought me plenty of extra bites and the actual stamp of fish increased. With the swim being fractionally deeper today, again it's been important to ensure that you've fed just slightly downstream instead of straight in front of you. This is so that you've got time for your rig to settle and actually run over where you think your loose feed is actually landing. By constantly feeding slightly downstream, I created an area in the peg where I seem to get most of the bites. I believe my loose feed was almost hitting the bottom in this area, and by holding and just checking the float slightly back when I got to this area, a bite soon followed. Even though we couldn't fish the same peg today as I qualified on, I've used exactly the same tactics, just keeping things simple but trying to do them very well. And I've had another cracking day's fishing. Finished up with about 15 or 16 pounds of roach and dace in just a few hours fishing. With the final taking place in September and the field already looking really strong, I've got plenty of time to get lots of preparation and practice in, and fingers crossed for a couple of good draws over the weekend.